Recording on the cloud. Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us. With us today, we have Whitmer High School, and Whitmer has been one of our shining stars in our Region 1 for a very long time in their implementation of PBIS. And even through the process of having new administration, they are still implementing PBIS, which speaks to the hard work that they have done to make this framework sustainable in their school. And so without further ado, I'll ask our presenters to introduce themselves briefly, and we'll get on with the presentation. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom Zeems. I'm the Associate Principal in our Dean's Office at Whitmer High School. This is my first year in the building, so you kind of get a little perspective from somebody that's being onboarded a little bit and bringing a little perspective. Previous to this, I was a teacher at Perrysburg High School, so have worked with PBIS previously and hope to continue to move PBIS forward here at Whitmer.
Hi, my name is Jody Farnan-Reed. I'm a dean at Whitmer High School. I have been at Whitmer High School for 25 years, previously working as a science teacher and a science department chair. I have been on this committee since its inception, so it's been a while that we've been doing this, and I hope that we can help you figure out how to get PBIS up and running in your high school.
Thank you so much.
So who is Whitmer, right? Well, we are Whitmer. That's kind of our catchphrase, or one of them here. And we're one of the largest high schools in the state of Ohio, one of the largest public high schools. We have around 2,200 students. Those students are enrolled here at the high school. We also have some in-person virtual students and some complete virtual students. About half of our students live at or below the poverty line. We are, I think, around 80% free and reduced lunch. We operate on a 7-period day. We also are a comprehensive career tech school, so our students can walk right across campus and take some of those career intensive courses. We have approximately 200 certified staff in our building.
All right, so in 2015, Whitmer High School was recognized as a silver, we received the silver recognition for our PBIS program. We worked really hard to get it up and running. We actually presented in at different schools. We went to Columbus, Ohio to receive this award from Lake Erie West. We have site visits from several schools, including Rossford, Woodward, Lorraine High School, Akron, Fremont, Napoleon, BGSU education students. So students that were going into teaching wanted to learn a little bit more about PBIS. So we've really worked with a lot of high schools in the area to help get PBIS up for their school.
You guys have been such a great partner to so many schools in our area. We really appreciate it.
Well, and you know, I think we take the motto of don't reinvent the wheel, right? If you have questions, we want to beg, borrow, and steal, and share as much as we can. So.
Absolutely.
So how did Whitmer go about starting a PBIS program? First, you have to choose your team, right? Start with a small group of individuals that are really motivated. Most of us know in committee work, it's kind of a small group that tends to get the work done. But find that group that's really motivated and handpick individuals that have kind of a wide range of talents. I highly recommend someone that is really good at working with data and understanding data or where to get that data. Cough, cough, Jody Farnan-Reed. If you have one of those in your building, make sure to get one on your team. Schedule monthly meetings. I like to schedule mine for the full year, and then people can have it on their calendar. It's nice when it's on sort of a regular schedule, you know, second Thursday of the month or whatever it happens to be, same meeting place, and you can kind of start to get in a rhythm that way. It's also great to go to workshops or reach out to networks like this one and find out more on how you can develop those behavior matrix that make sense for your building, right? You don't want to set goals that don't make sense for your population. You want to make sure that as you're setting goals or behavior plans, that it matches your students and where they're at.
This is our PBIS matrix, and we have this hanging throughout the building, primarily just so the students they see it, they're inundated with it. We will actually refer to the matrix when we are going over the first day of school expectations, classroom management expectations, how to behave in the cafeteria, hallway, restroom, offices, your classroom, overall on campus. And once we've developed these types of expectations, it's the fabric of how we operate. It's always around. Students, if you ask a student what are 3 pillars of PBIS, hopefully they can tell you ours at Whitmer is respectful, responsible, and safe. And I know Mr. Zeems is new to the building, but he really has a unique perspective on how in the Dean Center, we should start our conversations with students, even those students that may be down here for a specific behavior in a classroom. So I don't want to speak for Mr. Zeems. So if you would like to go over how you explain this to me, how you think this could even work in our area.
Sure. So for me, you know, a lot of behavior conversations can wrap around the pillars that your building chooses, right? And so if a student does something, throw something across the room, right? First, the teacher should be able to say, hey, was that action safe, right? It's a pretty clear answer that the answer to that question is no. And so how can we start to decide, all right, well, what can I do to make my behavior more safe in this environment? If students are consistently late to class, we have some issues where we have tardies, right? Or we have lates to school. Is that responsible? Is that responsible behavior that a 14, 15, 16-year-old should have? Or should they be able to get to class on time? And so if you can start to frame your conversations around these pillars, you're really starting to reinforce that positive behavior without, you know, the extrinsic awards, which we'll talk about. But you can really start to have a foundation and shift kind of the culture of your school environment in that way. So Jody, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about the data, if that's all right.
Yeah.
It's kind of before I got here. She and I were just talking before we got on. The best data we have still for our PBIS is back in 2019. And the reason is, right, all of the effects of the pandemic that have led up. Even this year still, we have students that are seated in different parts of the building for lunch, and you know, we're the new normal, or however you want to look at it. But our best data right now still comes from 2019 before I was here. So I'll let Jody talk about that.
Thank you. So back in 2019, during our first semester, we really wanted to dive into our data and see how many teachers were participating in awarding PBIS points for students, how many points were awarded for the positive behaviors, and then how many points were actually redeemed. So you can give points, but if students are not redeeming them, they're really just sitting there and doing nothing. So we wanted to look at the data and then make decisions based on the data that we've seen. So 111 staff members were awarded or had awarded points. So the buy-in was there. We started to have teacher buy-in. A lot of points were given, 16,395 points, but not very many points were redeemed. So I don't know if there was a disconnect between what the points were for. So we wanted that data to be used to say, okay, now we're giving students points. Do they even know what they can do with those points? And those are things that, as in a high school, you really have to reiterate those ideas with the students. And they have to be things that the students are interested in. So we can say, we can have posters up, you can remind them in the cafeteria what your points can be used for. You also can have them on your student announcements. We tried to push out some Twitter, reminders. Hey, if you have PBIS points, you can redeem them here. So the data really is starting to help us see what our next step is. Hopefully we can pull some data for the second semester of this school year, since we're starting to get back into a new normal and move forward in 2022.
So one thing that I feel like Whitmer has done really, really well is PBIS is branded really well around the building. So you'll see large banners like the one you see on the fence here throughout the building. Right down our main hallway, we have the sign, "We are responsible, respectful, safe. We are Whitmer." And that just reinforces what we have throughout the building. Now, that's something Whitmer's done pretty well all around. You'll find our school colors everywhere, but I really feel like they have done a nice job presenting it in a way that is digestible to students. It's not just a black and white, poster on a wall. There are nice posters that re-emphasize our pillars of respectful, safe, and responsible. The other thing you'll see around the building are our different matrices. In fact, this year we've had to kind of re-emphasize the restroom matrix. If you remember back in the fall, Tammy, perhaps you've heard about it, or viewers have, perhaps you had these problems in your building where students were vandalizing bathrooms, or they were doing different bathroom routines that they shouldn't be what they are. And so we had to kind of reprint these matrices and put them up around the building and have conversations kind of with the whole building and with staff on expectations for restroom use. So I know that there will be other times when our students rejoin the cafeteria together. Jody and I were just talking about that before we got on as well. Hopefully our students can all be back in the cafeteria at the same time. We'll probably have to talk about cafeteria behavior and what our expectations are for that as well.
Yes,
So-
TikTok.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, yeah. And that was
TikTok, use your
that-
powers for good, please.
Well, and that was something that as a staff, we were blindsided. Okay, this is a thing now. How do we address it? And we use PBIS to address those concerns that came up pretty quickly. It happened overnight, it seems. So how do we get our staff hooked into using or doing PBIS in their classroom? Well, we reminded them all the time. We had a PBIS section in the weekly bulletin that was given to staff every Friday. And from there, we reminded, please help this, for example, please help PBIS earn money for incentives for our students. We did, like the Kroger community rewards, where if you use your Kroger card, some of those points can be converted into money for whatever club or organization you support. So we wanted to make sure that even our staff was seeing that PBIS was still happening. Initiatives come and go, but PBIS isn't going anywhere. So we used the opportunity to keep our program alive. And so staff read it in the bulletin every week.
We followed that up this year. We've added in kind of a request for points. So what we'll do is we'll take a section of our matrix and ask teachers to look for behaviors that match what's going on there. And so through our point system, which we'll talk about, hey, teachers, we're asking you to award 1 to 3 points for students if they're exhibiting this behavior this week on this specific day. And so kind of a point splits to just remind teachers to be on the lookout for them and be awarding those and having those conversations with students. Jody, can you talk more about this?
Yeah. These are kind of the messages that we would give our staff. We would sneak into their classrooms in the early morning and put little candygrams or popcorn bags with little notes just to allow, just to give our staff some recognition, some support. Hey, this is from PBIS. We see you. We recognize you. We want you to have this little snack, something that kind of lifts their spirit. And this worked really well. The teachers were very, they were very appreciative of the opportunity. Like we gave them, you didn't have to do this for us. They're shocked that we went in and did all of these little tiny notes for them. What this also does is it reminds them where we're still doing PBIS. We're still a group at the building. We haven't really been able to do that this year, but looking back on what we have done with our candy messages, it may be a good idea for us to go back and quickly do this for the fourth quarter. So even going back through what we've done, we still are learning and getting better at implementing PBIS in our school. So this is how we try to get, our teachers involved in the beginning.
That's
And we
great,
talk all the
Jody.
time. Yeah, we talk all the time in training about how in order to change the students' behavior, we have to change the adults' behavior first. And, acknowledging people who are working so hard, acknowledging people who are implementing a PBIS framework, that helps in changing behaviors, and especially when it's in
certainly
a
does.
positive way like that. And it's great modeling for the adults because they enjoy it. So then they might be more willing to hand out points to students who also enjoy it.
Even if it's just for that day that they got their little candy grant. It's just a nice little reminder.
Mhm.
And we've, Tammy and Jody, that's a great point. As an administrator, I know that we do our best to recognize teachers when they're doing things, that we expect them to do, but even when they're above and beyond. We've had a couple of teachers respond to some situations this year, and it's like, hey, I need to make sure that I go find that person and thank them for what they did,
Mhm.
and make sure that I go out of my way to do it, right? And teachers have been very responsive to that. Positive reinforcement, right? Thank you for doing what you're doing. And I'm modeling for that teacher what I expect them to do for students as well. So very important to keep in mind. Along those notes, we do have teacher and staff rewards that we give as we're giving away points. We're not necessarily able to tie them directly to points that they award, but we are able to track through our point system which teachers are awarding points and how many points they're giving. So we have been able to give away gift cards for restaurants. Jody, what are some other things that I think Jeans Days we've given away? I know we see here, we talked about leaving early. I came up with having an administrator cover. We have an advisory period, so having an administrator cover an advisory period. There's lots of cheaper, inexpensive things that schools can do, especially for teachers.
So the advisory period actually kind of connects to their lunchtime. So it would give teachers like an additional 30-ish minutes added to their lunch, which, for a teacher, that's amazing. You could
That's
actually
huge.
maybe go get something to eat or use the bathroom, after lunch. So those are things that the smallest little tiny prizes that cost nothing, like Tom said. The lucky duck, if you see this little Elvis duck, at the beginning of the year, the administrators had these ducks, and everyone got to pick one, and it had a number at the bottom, and they would draw the numbers. So that was attached to the PBIS bulletin piece. So we would know technically if they were reading the bulletin, if they, when they would look for their prize. So that could have been really small too. That could have been, a candy bar or another free, for your jeans for a day or whatever the administrator decided for that week. We were on blocks during this time, arrived 1 block late for the day. So this would be a period now. So, come to school at 9 o'clock versus whatever. Again, a very inexpensive way to just get teacher buy-in.
Again, things that don't cost a whole lot, right? But go a really long way in the eyes of a teacher.
That's right.
This is a Jeopardy review game that we play with students. And we actually have run it through our advisory this year. Just kind of different questions that we can ask students to see if they're reading our handbook and keeping up to date with where things are at in the building. Just sort of a fun way to engage students, other than just showing them a matrix and reading word for word what's on that matrix, like they could just read and do on their own.
All right.
Go ahead, Jody.
Yeah, so you weren't here. These were really cool, and it ended up costing some money to keep producing these. So we will show you what we graduated to later on. But these were what we would give students. Hey, you did the right thing, and then they would scratch off and see what prize they won. Some of them weren't, you get a small piece of candy. Some kids got a t-shirt or, a water bottle or whatever the prize was underneath. So in the beginning, the teacher would write the student name, the grade, their ID number, and the student would scratch the prize off. They would redeem the ticket for the prize. Then that ticket would go into a big wheel, and we could pull those tickets for bigger prizes at the end of the semester or the end of the quarter. So at first we did this without the given by line. And it really was, we didn't know who was giving the ticket. So we decided as a group, well, we really need to know which teachers are doing PBIS. So we put the given by line, and if the student won, the bigger prize at the end of the quarter, then the teacher won something also.
Now, Jody, I want to jump in and ask a question here, a data question. When you were doing these cards, were you collecting any data on how many cards were being given or how many teachers were giving cards? And the reason I ask is at Perrysburg High School, we did the same thing and we did not, right? So we didn't have any data on how students were doing or how teachers were doing with handing these things out.
Yes, we did collect data, and it was extremely tedious. And we realized very quickly, not only the cost of the tickets started to become prohibitive, but then the data collection in and of itself could take a lot of time. Now, we would use some of our students that were in like a life skills class to organize the tickets for us and maybe organize them, you know, by grade, because we did want to collect data, you know, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, but it just took a really long time. So we kind of put our heads together to create our new system. If you want to click to the next slide.
Before I do that,
yeah.
and the reason I ask is I'd heard the same thing previously, not from this school, but from another. There was a junior high that I worked with, and they were using cards, and then they'd collect all the cards back and then have to hand enter all that information into a spreadsheet to try and gather that data, right? So this is kind of the solution to that problem. And that I didn't know the answer to Jody's question. I really wanted to ask, but tell us more about the app, Jody.
Okay, I want to go back to why we got, another reason why we got rid of cards is because some students never turned them in. So we had teachers that were giving points, but if the students never turned them in, we didn't know. So there was like a huge gap in the data. So we had a student that graduated from Whitmer High School, a very talented kind of software programmer, and we told him what we needed. We wanted an online point collection system for PBIS, and he helped us create it. And we were able to then digitally redeem points, award points, and then we could collect the data pretty simply by just downloading it into an Excel file. So this is what the login looks like. Once the students log into their account, they're automatically signed in, teachers as well. So you have your students, whatever picture they put for their, you know, Google ID, that's the picture that you see. We can award 1, 3, or 5 points. And it's a quick snapshot, but you can always see how many points the student has, what grade they are, and then their student ID.
So what you see here at the bottom, you see the student, their ID number. We have to use those because we have students that have the same name, frankly, their grade level, and then their total points that they have. So that tells us how many points they can redeem in our store. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes.
This was a pretty cool addition. It was the reason why they were awarded the points. And it's optional, so it's not something that you can not use it if you don't want to. But a lot of teachers were putting in some really cool reasons why they were awarding students points, and even reasons that we wouldn't have thought of. For example, this student helped, you know, a student clean up a mess in the cafeteria. We would expect PBIS points to be awarded for that. But then their teachers were putting points in for a student that may have, you know, they really helped a student in class that was struggling with their assignment, or we got some specific reasons, and it gave us a snapshot of really what our kids were doing positively in our school. So we were able to add why we were awarding the points.
And the other part to this I think is important. Students like to know why they receive points.
Absolutely.
I've had to remind our teachers, and I know I need to do it again, that when you award a point to a student, hey, tell the student that you're awarding these points, right? Tammy, you've done a really great job. I see how respectful you're being in the hallway, and I just really want to recognize you for that, right? And so that is what reinforces the behavior. You can give points to students all day. If they don't know why they're getting them, then it's kind of defeating the entire purpose of the system.
That's right.
Yeah, because this is used as a mini teaching opportunity too. You know, thank you for being respectful by, and we're telling the students again what behavior we want them to repeat. So, oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, if you aren't lucky enough to have a student computer software genius as an alum, PBIS Rewards is an online system for PBIS points. And then there is also another system called Live School. They do have costs involved with them, though, obviously. And so it's a costly option, but you also have to weigh how much does it cost to print all of the cards and buy all of the stickers.
That's exactly right.
Yes.
Well, and again, I'll go back to Tammy. The cost is likely worth it just in the data collection alone, right?
Right.
To be able to organize it, collect the data in a good way, and then have conversation points for your monthly meetings. If I don't have something to look at and reference, I want to look at maybe discipline behaviors and things that I want to reinforce or change, but I also want to look at how's our system doing. And if I don't have those two things to look at, what are we talking about? So just a few more things on our Panther point system. This is what it looks like from our student view. And so once they log in, they have an idea what their points look like. They can also see what they've redeemed points for, what the reward was that they claimed. So it's a pretty neat little kind of online store that we have built by our super genius graduate student whose mom, right, Jody, works in the building. So we kind of have a hook in the building there. And then this is, again, what it looks like, the point history, the teacher that awards points, and then the number of points that they give, and then a timestamp. So we can start to collect data on, we can narrow down our time band to see how did we do during this month or that month or this semester, and start to compare those over years that don't necessarily include COVID.
This would be our rewards. Certain things that we have done would be, the traditional things like Gatorade or chips or candy. We do get some donations from staff to help supply those types of rewards. Varsity football tickets we've done basketball tickets. We have a parking spot. We have a cut in line for the cafeteria. Some of these things cost nothing. You do have to be careful on how many points you make things. If you make things too much, kids will never get enough points to redeem for an award or a prize. So you kind of have to make sure that you're not pointing out the prizes. Like, okay, well, a varsity football ticket is 100 points. These kids will never be able to redeem for that. So we wanted to make sure that we were making these prizes redeemable. At the same time, we also wanted to make sure that there was a variety in the rewards. If kids didn't want to save up for maybe a ticket or parking spot or whatever, they could redeem for a small piece of candy. So it just really varies on the type of kid that you have. So we did what was Panther Paws this past time. Headbands, we have done like the cold winter gear, hats, gloves. So we've really tried to make a variety of prizes.
So this is our PBIS store in a traditional world. We have a stage in our cafeteria, kind of a low stage, but we're able to set that up. We've converted ours to kind of a mobile store currently. So it sits on a cart, and 2 days a week, we're able to roll that out. We have office workers out of our student office here that come out and are able to work that for us during lunches and work that whole point system. So they're able to redeem points for students and hand out those awards, and we can continue to collect that data. So here's some more ideas of prizes, on a limited budget. We talked about our PBIS parking spot right front and center in front of the school, candy and chips, Gatorade, homecoming tickets. We talked about that parking spot, different spirit wear, athletic tickets, as long as you can get your athletic department in on that. We normally run a campus cafe with our culinary students, so we're able to offer lunch from them. This is a fun one students really like, is jumping the line in the cafeteria. Normally when they do it, there's a consequence that comes from that, but this is a ticket on those chicken nugget days or whatever they happen to be in your building, where students really want to be able to get to the front of the line and make sure they get that lunch quick. There's different things that we can get donations. We have local companies that give us gift cards for things all the time. We've even had flat screen TVs donated. The cookie decorating one is one that's kind of fun for students. So we bring in the ingredients for cookies. So we have the cookies all prepared, and students could actually redeem points to get a cookie and decorate it themselves right there, kind of on the spot. So that's been kind of fun. Yeah, so that's been pretty great. Here are some pictures of some different payouts that we've had. You might have seen on the previous slide some baskets that were given away. Here's our former high school principal. This is cookie decorating, right, Jody?
Yep.
So just a lot of, and students really get into it. You're reminded that students like to have fun too, right? Sometimes it's nice to get out that routine of, oh neat, I got this little old tiny bag of Swedish fish and no, I'm gonna make a cookie today. That kind of sounds fun, so.
And
I've also
we were surprised how many students they would tell us, I've never done this before. I've never decorated a cookie. So you're kind of opening up a different world to them, and they loved it. We had a candy or a winter break. You could make, chocolate covered pretzels and all sorts of things. We did that in one of our kitchens that we had in the main building, and that went over super well. And then now with the pandemic, we had to hold back on those types of rewards, but we are hoping to bring those back into play very soon.
I hope so, for everybody's
Yeah, me
sake. I
too.
know I've seen some other schools that have done like an ice cream sundae bar.
Oh, yeah, we did
And-
that, yep.
Yep, and the bowl of ice cream is 5 points, but then each topping is a few extra. So most kids can get at least the bowl of ice cream, but then the more toppings you add, the more points are involved or
And how
something
fun is
like
that? That's so
Yeah.
fun.
Here's some different awards being handed out. Kids love Chick-fil-A lunch, something that I've seen our principal even this year run out and get lunch for some kids that are just doing the right things.
And this was when, if you go back a slide,
Yep.
so you would see that there are teachers in the slide, and the student would ask the teacher, one of their teachers, to either eat with them, or it was the teacher who awarded them the points. And they would buy a ticket and would go into a raffle bin, and you would pull the ticket, and then they won the Chick-fil-A lunch for that day. So it was really a neat way to get the student and the teacher to sit down and eat a lunch together and kind of just connect.
Mhm. And everybody likes free lunch,
Absolutely.
especially Chick-fil-A.
So these are different options that we've had for kind of some grand prize drawings. Jody just mentioned that we've had students kind of use their points to buy a ticket for an entry into the big wheel, right? And so what we'll do is we'll write different prizes on that wheel. We had a little bit different spin on it this year before Christmas break. We kind of let any student that wanted to walk up and was brave enough to ask, hey, what's that thing for? We let them spin a digital wheel that could either give them an instant prize or a chance to spin this big prize. We had things on there. Jody mentioned some basketball tickets, some Whitmer swag.
Yeah.
We had some other things. I think some gift cards to some different restaurants.
Gatorade.
Yeah, just some different things that students get engaged, and it was kind of a big hit. So I really like the Plinko chips myself. I love watching kids drop those and win some different prizes that way too. So yeah, just some different things. Now we have I think both of these were made by either classes or staff here, right, Jody?
That's right. In our construction.
So we have construction trades. You could ask a wood shop teacher. Chances are there's somebody in your building that has the talent to be able to do these, usually just for the cost of material, right? So don't think you got to spend a whole lot of money to do these things. One thing PBIS does need though is fundraising, right? All this stuff has to come from somewhere. Some schools are fortunate enough that it's worked into their budget. Others, we gotta go see what we can do. Now there are some kind of low impact ways that we can do that. Just asking teachers if they maybe want to donate a bag of candy, going around to various clubs, or for example, the athletic director, our career tech has donated a number of different things, water bottles, things like that. We've sold t-shirts. We also had some foam panther paws that were printed, and so we use that as a fundraiser. Through Kroger rewards, if you happen to have Kroger in your local area, reaching out to them and then getting that information out to parents. Even college donations or different people that might come in, and lots of different ways that you can build funds and do different things. Jody, did I miss anything?
No, we did send out some letters to local businesses, and we did have a couple businesses say, yeah, we're willing to donate. When we get to what we did within the past couple of years, I'll explain how that business donation kind of helped us out during the COVID time. This would be an annual dodgeball game, and students would have a team. They'd set up, gather whoever they needed for their team. There's an entry fee, and then we would sell tickets for the students to come and watch our team play dodgeball against each other. It's usually a pretty big hit. Kids like to watch this. We have had teacher teams, we've had students and teachers teams, we've had any combination that you could think of. The thing that you have to remember is that when you are in a district that suffers from some poverty issues, you've got to make sure the ticket prices are not going to price them out. So we're charging $1 a ticket, $2 a ticket. And we've made some money on that. It's not our biggest fundraiser, but it's something to get the school involved and to still talk about PBIS.
Mhm.
Again, here's some different fundraising ideas, working concession stands, your Kroger rewards. Those are the Panther Paws I was referring to. Just selling those, a little bit more than what they cost to make, but it generates some resources for our PBIS team. Make sure that you're out there on social media. We try to teach our kids that the best social media engagement is positive social media engagement. So making sure to tag your PBIS and getting involved with your positive social media relations, right? It's just it's good PR for the school, and it's a good way to get PBIS recognized by the community as well.
All right, so during the pandemic, we had to be creative. We didn't want PBIS to go away. And we put so much work into it. We wanted to keep it running, and we wanted to keep it relevant. So what we decided to do is we decided to do PBIS virtually. And teachers would enter names on a spreadsheet. We took away the program that we had made. So teachers would enter students' names on a spreadsheet. This student did, this, whatever. So we would pull the students' names, enter them on the wheel of names and spin it. And if we would say we are going to spin for 10 student prizes, and if the student names came up, they won the prize. It was usually a lunch, and it was a pizza. And the dean's office, with sometimes our security, sometimes the other administrators, we would hand deliver the pizzas to their home during the pandemic. Take a picture, put it on PBIS or put it on social media. It was a huge hit. Students loved it. They loved watching the Zoom video, Screencastify video we made. We also did this for teachers. And this is where some businesses came in, and they gave us, one of our car washes in the area gave us free car washes for teachers, and it would be for an entire month, the works.
Wow.
And we would spin the wheel, and if teachers nominated students, that's how they were entered onto the wheel. And we would spin, and teachers would win car washes. We had Chick-fil-A, we had Panera, whatever we could find for gift cards for the teachers also. We wanted to keep it relevant. We wanted to keep it active during this time. And now we actually have students that want that back. They want to win the pizza again for lunch. They loved it that much. So this was a way that we were able to get PBIS still relevant in the time of COVID. And we've actually done a wheel for teachers this year, just before the winter break, just to kind of give them they won car washes again. So we're still getting the donations for things like that.
That's awesome. And
It
it's
was
so,
really fun.
yeah. And then having those pizzas delivered, kind of a mini home visit, just in a fun, positive way. And
I think for one of the first, if you've never been to a student house, you really learn a lot going into their world and seeing how a student lives or where they live. And it was really beneficial for all of us to do that during that time. It was eye-opening, and I loved it. It was one of the best things that I've done during the COVID time. It was to be able to give lunch to the students. The parents were so appreciative. they'd come out and talk to us. They just wanted to thank us for even recognizing their students. So it was really a good opportunity to get to know your student in a different way.
Some photos of the handouts.
Yep. And if a student didn't want their picture taken, we didn't force them. And I can tell you there was one that didn't want their picture taken. Most students were very proud of getting the pizza and they really wanted their picture on social media. So that was really fun.
Listen, local pizza place, my kids swear by Jacob's Pizza. We're not allowed to order it from anywhere else. So anyway, just a little plug for them, but reach out to your local businesses, right? You never know until you ask how they're going to feel. So this year we were able to bring back prizes and be able to do things in the building. Like I said, we've got students on Tuesdays and Thursdays that are set up with our store. However it works for your building to be able to have those. Some people might be able to have their stores open in the morning before school or after school. Ours just happens to work at best during lunches. This year, I think next year it might change because our schedule might change. So you just got to find ways that students can get engaged and have access to those things. So Tammy, I know we don't have any live guests with us, but are there any other questions you had for us or things we didn't cover?
I think you've touched on it a lot, but a question, or you touched on it a little bit, but a question that I get a lot is how, especially at high school, how do you help staff to buy in to PBIS and implementing a framework?
That's tough.
It is tough. And I think to talk this year is even harder. We haven't had an in-person staff meeting with everybody in our building. And again, I know across the state, different people are doing different things. So it's just being consistent with that messaging. You know, Jody said, reaching out and making sure that it's in the bulletin. I think pointed emails that just say, hey, you know, we really want to target these behaviors. Once we started to send some of those, and actually those emails generate from another teacher. So it's not the principal or one of the deans reaching out to say, hey, please do this. It's another teacher that's on our PBIS staff that's writing those emails to say, hey, let's look for, you know, let's look, making sure that students are not using their cell phones when you're lecturing or whatever it happens to be. We started to see a real uptick in points when we saw that. When teachers just have that gentle reminder of, oh, I got to look for this today. Cool, I can do that, right? And it's just a matter of keeping that thing going. And sometimes it's just engaging in conversation. You know, hey, Jody, I'm curious, what are your feelings on PBIS? Okay, great. You know, is there anything I can do to support you more? And those sorts of things.
Great, thank you. And the other question I think I hear the most often, and I have an answer for it that I use, but how would you answer if someone said, well, they're high schoolers, they should know better already?
That's one we get all the time as well. And the way that I answer this, and I think I also do this from a place of being a parent. It's okay, maybe you feel like they should know it, but if they don't, then we have to show them the positive behaviors, the behaviors that were expected out of them in our building. Everybody's raised differently. We don't all have the same we don't have the same background. So a student that comes into a school building, they may not have ever known that this is how you act in the bathroom. I'm just kind of throwing that out there. So we are showing students how we want them to behave. It's high school teachers, for some reason, think they should already know everything by the time they get to us. But that's not the case. We're still guiding them. Right. We're still evolving them into the adult that they need to be and are going to be very soon. So that's a tough one. Tom, what do you think?
I have two answers. And the first one is one that Jody has heard so many times this year. And that's when I'm having a conversation with a student, I'm remembering that I'm kind of subtracting 2 from their grade level. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean that in a social way, right? Someone pointed out to me recently that the last time that our seniors had a normal school year was their freshman year of high school, right?
Yeah.
So if I keep that in mind when I'm having a conversation, I have to teach them the expectations, right? I have to teach them kind of what I want going forward. And the second one is, yes, you know, they're high school students and they have all this experience, but at the same time, they're still kids, right?
Mhm.
So just reminding them of what your expectations are in your building is what can start to shape the culture of your building, right? If you just think that society is all just going to act the same because, well, you know, you're 15, so everybody knows this. Well, that's, Jody mentioned this. It's not the case. Every student is unique and different, and needs to be shown kind of the expectations of your building and your community and what you're hoping to build.
Absolutely. And we were talking just before we started the recording, as a high school, our job is to prepare them
Mhm.
to be employable, enlisted, or enrolled somewhere. I got 'em.
Right. You got them.
So, yeah, I got all three.
And
Or
you
college.
know, especially at our school, we really focus a lot on employed. I mean, because no matter what, right? Even if you're enlisted, guess what? You're also employed by that person. If you're going to go to college, chances are when you graduate, you're still going to have to be employed. So if we can
Mhm.
send you away from our place, ready to be hired and work somewhere and be a contributing member to society. I've heard that phrase a lot. This is how we're helping them do that, right? And the way that we do that is to teach our students to be respectful, responsible, and safe. And if I can be those three things, it's going to be kind of hard to go wrong into the future.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jody and Tom, for your time after a long day working. I
You're welcome.
really appreciate you taking the time to record this so that you can continue to help other high schools across the state of Ohio, very honestly, to implement a PBIS framework. So thank you so much for your time. We so very much appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I don't want to speak for Jody, but please put my contact information in there, attached to any videos that you're going to post or anything like that. We're happy to help. Like we said at the beginning, let's not reinvent the wheel. You know, I want to be able to help and share as much as we can.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.